I'm going to answer a question today, a question that every boat owner is constantly concerned about. Does my boat leak? Okay, Lowell Shepard here, Pacific Soul in the Never Too Late Academy, on board my Gibsy 402 Wahine, made in France, has spent most of her life sailing here in Japan. Does my boat leak? I'm no expert on these things. I've been learning as I go. First, I was concerned that I couldn't make this like a submarine, but I realized early on that boat is always going to leak. I had somebody come on board Wahine recently, fine gentleman, looking at possibly buying her. He spent a couple hours with this checklist going through everything. He really liked her, said she ticks all his boxes, but he found water in the bilge. I want to show you the reasons why. And something I've learned recently about dripless seals has come in handy because they can drip at times, and there's an instant remedy to solve that problem. So let's go. I'm going to take you to the key spots on the boat that I always check. And I have always felt comfortable that Wahine is a dry boat. She doesn't leak where it matters. My boat has leaked before due to accidents. My boat nearly sunk off the coast of Nagasaki and had to be rescued by the Coast Guard, and that was because of damage to the dripless seal. So let's go. Well, before we get to the dripless seal, I'm going to show you the places that I always check, the most important places to check if there's water in the bilge. And this is the number one spot. It's midship. It's the lowest part of the boat. The bilge is pretty shallow because there's a lot of headroom in this Gibsy 402. So these are the places I always check, morning and evening. I should add that it actually rained last night. It's up this floorboard, and I see if there's any water in the bilge. And if water came in anywhere, it would eventually find its way here, midship on the boat. So good news. Now the second place I always check, and this is beginning to get closer to the dripless seal, I simply undo those latches and I lean her back. And this is one of the places where he found a little bit of seawater, and you can see down there, and as you can tell, it's absolutely bone dry. And it's been bone dry. It's been five days now since he visited, I think. Now when he checked, there was a bit of water there, and it was seawater. And of course that is a concern. But let me show you the back part of the engine room where the dripless seal is. Now this part of the engine room is not quite so easy to get into. Open up the engine room. That's the dripless seal. Now I had an accident 3 years ago, and that was replaced. When he said there was seawater in the engine room, I immediately came and checked the dripless seal. Sure enough, right here, there was some water. Right now, there's only humidity in here. Now, dripless seals are not supposed to drip. So I've just come out of the engine room and a dripless seal. So let me tell you a brief story. I had an accident at sea. It was a January morning, left at 5 a.m. So I was motor sailing at first along the coastline, leaving Nagasaki Goto, going to Ikejima. Just after sunrise, when I saw a debris field, to make a long story short, I saw a discarded fishing net about a half a meter under the water. Went to push back on the throttle right away and stop the propeller from turning, but in that millisecond, too late. And the propeller blade caught the net, instant turn off the engine, and that jolt was step one of a two-step cause. And first of all, that jolt sent a vibration up the propeller shaft and a bit of micro debris as well, and it cracked the ceramic seal. I didn't know it at the time. I just know I couldn't get the engine started. I had this massive now swath of net being dragged behind the boat. Eventually had to call the Coast Guard and get towed. Once I got to port, I hired a diver the next morning to dive down and undo the net, and then to see if I could start the engine. And this was step 2 of the cause of the problem, and that is, yes, I started the engine. It worked. I was so relieved. I put it in forward, I put it in reverse, and it worked. I thought, oh, I'm happy. So I went back for a nap for a couple hours, got out of my berth a couple hours later, and I stepped into water. That was scary. The dripless seal had gone. What had happened, according to the engineer, is that once I started the engine again, that exacerbated the problem, and really just the ceramic seal just basically became totally useless, and the water began to not gush in, but a steady drip, 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 drip. So I had it replaced. And all of that story is in another video. I'll point you to it if you're interested in PSS seals. But about 3 months ago, and this is what I learned about PSS seals. I had a friend mechanic come and help me from the marina change my oil. He had the bigger machine to pump the oil out. So I thought, okay, it's nice to have company and do it in a third the time. Afterwards, we started the engine to circulate the oil. I came down to check, and I noticed underneath the dripless seal I just showed you, it was moist. And put my finger up, sure enough, there was a small drip. And in panic, I said to Ishida-san, the dripless seal is broken. He says, what? And he came down and took a look. This is a very experienced seaman, captain of ships, and knows his stuff from an engineering and mechanical point of view. And he says, no, your boat has been sitting for a few weeks. The engine has not been running. This can happen. Go back up on deck and put your boat in forward and in reverse and forward and reverse. You do that a few times, then go down and check, and the drip will have stopped. I did that, and indeed that worked. When the person visited my boat and was concerned about the seawater, he had started the engine while I was off the boat with the boat broker, and I had started the engine the day before, and in neither case did we put forward and reverse. So I assured him that I knew the problem, but then to convince myself, after he left, I cleaned everything up, made it bone dry down there again, and started the engine, went up, did the forward, back, came down and checked, and no leak whatsoever. And this has now been 5 days, and it's bone dry down there. So a dripless seal can leak if your boat has been sitting still, and the remedy is, when you start it up, and don't leave it idling in neutral, get it in forward and reverse right away. That problem was solved. It didn't satisfy the prospective buyer, which is fine. I respect his view. For him, water in the bilge is a deal breaker. Fair enough. But for me, this is my home, so I'm continuing with my plans to finish a loop around Japan next year. So I want my boat to be in tip-top shape. I would say at this point, part of my plan is I'm hauling my boat out this autumn, and I'm going to redo all the plumbing, hoses and clamps, and also the through hulls, because it's time for that to happen anyways. Now let's go to the other place where he found water. And in this place, there is a bit of mystery. And let's go to the forward cabin. I've not checked it now for 5 days, so let's see if there's any water there. Got this rag to wipe anything up. Okay, so as you can see by the reflection, there is water here. And this has been part of the course the last few months. Now these are the depth sounders. Now I'm going to taste the water. Yeah, that's hard to tell. What I thought this problem was, and the reason why I'm redoing the plumbing, is I've got leaky pipes. So when I flush the toilet, There's water that's found here from the toilet next door. But I think there is a depth sounder problem right here. Seems like there's water coming out of the depth sounder. You can see I put a bunch of gunk there before, and it's there. So that is a problem I'm going to be addressing. Here's the toilet. I'm just going to use the cloth to wipe everything up. So that's after 5 days. It took 3 squeezes of this rag. But it is a concern with those depth sounders. And I made a very messy job before, but that needs attention. So the question, does my boat leak? Yes, it does. Am I worried about it? Well, yes, you should always have a degree of worry and certainly be diligent in checking your bilges. The PSS seal, I wish that didn't happen. It really scared me when it did happen with the new seal, and now I know how to remedy that problem. And with PSS seals, when they do leak and there's an accident, it is catastrophic, as it was for me, and I've talked to other sailors the same. But that forward bilge, there is water coming out of that depth sounder, and I'm gonna have to remedy that. Yes, my boat leaks. I know the reason, understand the peculiarities of each leak, and whether it's sweet water or whether it's seawater. That's me, over and out. And I'm glad that where it counts, there's no water this morning after some heavy rain last night. Thanks, bye.